We all know that Japanese manufacturers make the best bikes, right? Well, it's a bit more complicated. You see, even the best Japanese brands have a few bikes that don't do so well on the market. Sometimes dealers have to literally end up locking away these bikes because no one wants to buy them. With that being said, here are 10 Japanese bikes dealers are scrambling to jump. 10. Honda CB200X. Adventure bikes are booming right now, but the Honda CB200X is barely making a ripple. On the surface, it looks like a mini Africa twin. Tall stance, sharp bodywork, and a windshield that says, "Let's go on an adventure." But that's where the illusion ends. Underneath, it's more commuter than explorer. At its core, the CB200X is just a Honda Hornet 2.0 dressed up in adventure gear. Same 184cc engine, same chassis, and nearly identical suspension. That's fine if you want a city-friendly bike with some rugged styling, but if you actually plan on taking it off-road, you're in for a disappointment. The suspension lacks the travel needed for serious terrain. The 17-inch wheels are road-biased, and the engine, producing just 17 horsepower, isn't built for anything more than casual highway cruising. Honda fans and dealers might argue that reliability and fuel efficiency make up for everything else, but no one else believes that. Still, at least the CB200X has some charm in its styling. The next bike on this list doesn't even have that going for it. Before we continue, hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and turn on the notification icons so you're updated whenever we post new videos. 9. Suzuki Gixxer 250. Suzuki had a golden opportunity with the Gixxer 250. The 250cc market is huge. You've got sport bike lovers, tourers, commuters, and even first-time buyers looking for an upgrade. But instead of making a statement, Suzuki played it safe. Too safe. The Gixxer 250 isn't bad. In fact, it's a well-built machine with decent performance. The 249cc oil-cooled single makes 26.5 horsepower and 16 pounds-a-foot of torque, which is respectable. The chassis is well-balanced, handling is nimble, and it's comfortable for city riding. But here's the problem. It doesn't excel at anything. If you're into aggressive sports bikes, the Yamaha R15 offers a much more engaging ride. If you want power, the KTM Duke 250 runs circles around the Gixxer. But if you thought Suzuki missed the mark, the next bike on this list proves that even big names can fumble badly. 8. Yamaha FZ25. The Yamaha FZ series used to be the go-to for street fighters. When the first FZ16 launched, it was an instant hit. Muscular looks, peppy performance, and unmatched street presence. Fast forward to today, and the FZ25, it's struggling to keep up. On paper, it should be a solid choice. A 249cc air-cooled engine, 20.8 horsepower. Sounds decent, right? But in a market where competitors are pushing 25 to 30 horsepower in the same segment, the FZ25 feels slow. The engine lacks excitement, and Yamaha's decision to stick with air cooling instead of liquid cooling puts it at a disadvantage. And then there's the gearbox. A 5-speed transmission in 2025? Really? Most bikes in this class come with a 6-speed, which helps with highway cruising. The FZ25's lack of a 6th gear means it feels buzzy at higher speeds, making long distances rides tiring. It's a tough pill to swallow because the FZ series has such a strong legacy. But unless Yamaha gives the FZ25 a serious overhaul, it's going to keep fading into the background. And speaking of fading, the next bike on this list might not be around in a few years. 7. Suzuki Intruder 150. Some bikes struggle to sell because of weak performance, others because of bad pricing. And then there's the Suzuki Intruder 150, a bike that had everything going for it except the one thing that matters most: looks. Suzuki tried to bring the big, imposing cruiser feel of the Intruder M1800R to the 150cc segment, but something got lost in translation. The bulky front end, oversized panels, and exaggerated curves made it look awkward rather than premium. It was trying too hard to be something it wasn't. Underneath, it was just a Suzuki Gixxer 155 with cruiser styling. And while the 14.8 horsepower engine was decent for a city-friendly cruiser, it wasn't nearly enough to justify the extra weight the bike carried. Riders expected a smooth, comfortable ride, but instead, they got a machine that felt sluggish and oddly proportioned. The market spoke loud and clear, and Suzuki eventually pulled the plug. That's one weirdly styled Suzuki down, but if you think this was a tough sell, wait until you hear about the next bike. 6. Honda Navy. Is it a scooter? Is it a motorcycle? Honda still hasn't given us a straight answer, and that's exactly why the Navy struggled to find a home in the market. To be fair, Honda was onto something interesting here. The Navy had a motorcycle-like stance, but the heart of a scooter, specifically the same 109cc engine from the Activia. It was light, fun, and quirky, and in the US, it actually did okay. But in places like India, where it was originally launched, it confused the heck out of buyers. People looking for a scooter wanted the convenience of storage and a step-through design, two things the Navy didn't offer. Meanwhile, motorcycle buyers wanted something that looked like a real bike, not a mini toy. It sat in this weird middle ground where it didn't fully appeal to either audience. Dealers had a tough time pushing the Navy off showroom floors, and Honda eventually pulled the plug in India. Ironically, it later found a niche in the US, but by then, the damage had been done. But if you think that this was a misstep, the next bike takes failure to a whole new level. If you're enjoying the video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. 5. Honda Click. Ever heard of the Honda Click? If you haven't, you're not alone. Even when it was on sale, most people had no idea it existed. Honda designed the Click as a budget-friendly, no-frills scooter for rural markets. It had the same 110cc engine as the Activia, came from rugged plastic bodywork, and was meant to be a practical, no-nonsense option. In theory, it should have done okay, but in practice, total disaster. The first issue was the design. It was too basic, so much so that it looked unfinished. Buyers weren't just looking for affordability, they still wanted something that felt like a proper scooter. The Click looked like a half-hearted experiment, and no one was willing to take a chance on it. Sales were so bad that in the 2020 through 21 financial year, Honda reportedly sold just one unit over a 7-month period. Eventually, Honda gave up and discontinued the Click. We've seen a few Honda flops so far, but up next is a bike from Suzuki that was so unimpressive that it practically killed itself before it even had a chance. 4. Suzuki V-Strom SX250. Adventure bikes are supposed to be exciting. They should make you want to pack your bags, hit the road, and chase the horizon. But the Suzuki V-Strom SX250? It doesn't quite inspire that feeling. And that's exactly why dealers are struggling to get rid of them. On the surface, it looks like Suzuki did everything right. Borrowed styling from the legendary V-Strom 650, gave it a 250cc engine, and slapped on some ADV branding. The engine makes 26.5 horsepower, which is fine, but it doesn't feel particularly lively. It's one of those bikes that isn't bad, but also isn't compelling enough for people to choose over its rivals. And when buyers aren't excited, dealers are stuck with unsold inventory. But if you think Suzuki messed up here, wait until you see this next bike. 3. Yamaha R3 New Gen. At one point, the Yamaha R3 was the beginner sport bike to have. It was sleek, fast enough for new riders, and carried that iconic R-Series DNA. But somewhere along the way, Yamaha lost the plot. The latest R3 is struggling to find buyers, and it's easy to see why. Let's start with the specs. The 321cc parallel twin engine makes 42 horsepower. Not bad, but not game-changing either. The problem is that the competition has leapfrogged it. The Kawasaki Ninja 400 offers more power and better low-end torque. The KTM RC390 is a corner-carving monster, with tech features the R3 can't match. Even Honda's CBR 500R, though heavier, feels like a better long-term investment. Dealers are feeling the pinch. While Yamaha's smaller R15 continues to do well in certain markets, the R3 isn't exactly flying off showroom floors. But if you think the R3 struggle is bad, the next bike on this list was doomed before it even launched. 2. Honda CB300F. You ever see a bike and think, who exactly is this for? That's the Honda CB300F in a nutshell. Honda clearly wanted to tap into the naked street fighter market, but instead of delivering a head-turning machine, they gave us this. Let's start with the performance, or lack thereof. The CB300F is powered by a 293cc oil-cooled single, making just 24 horsepower. That's barely better than some 200cc bikes. At a time when competitors are offering punchier liquid-cooled engines with 30-plus horsepower, the CB300F feels underwhelming. The design doesn't help either. It's not bad, but it's also not special. But as bad as the CB300F is struggling, there's still one bike that's doing even worse. A bike so poorly received, dealers might as well be giving it away. 1. Suzuki GSX 250R. Some bikes are just destined to fail, whether it's bad timing, poor specs, or a price that makes 0 sense. Certain models hit the market and immediately start gathering dust in showrooms. And when it comes to recent failures, nothing stands out quite like the Suzuki GSX 250R. First, let's get this out of the way. This bike is not a real GSX-R. It might carry the name, but if you're expecting a baby GSX-R 1000, prepare for disappointment. Instead of a high-revving performance-focused engine, Suzuki threw in a 248cc parallel twin, making, wait for it, 24 horsepower. That's barely more than some 150cc sport bikes. But it gets worse. Suzuki designed the GSX 250R with an old engine, one that wasn't particularly exciting even when it was new. And they slapped on some flashy fairings to make it look fast. Except anyone who actually rode it quickly realized that the styling was the only exciting thing about it. The result? It sat. And sat. And sat. Even in markets where Suzuki has a strong presence, dealers found themselves practically begging people to take it off their hands. By the time Suzuki finally discontinued it in most regions, it was already too late. The GSX 250R had cemented itself as one of the worst-selling Japanese bikes in recent years. And there you have it, 10 bikes that dealers just can't seem to move. But if you think we missed any other bike, let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell icon.